All right, yeah, I'm here with Dave Mariani, founder of AtScale, and Stijn, the man, co-founder of Collibra, with me at the Data and Analytics Summit, Gartner 2023 in London. Super excited to chat with both of them, hear more about the founder story, learn more about data and analytics, Semantic Layer, and much more. Why not start with your introduction, Dave? Maybe you can go first.
Well, I am Dave Mariani. I'm the co-founder and CTO of AtScale.
Stijn?
Thanks for having me over, Ravit. Nice to meet you, Dave. Stijn, Christiaens from Collibra, one of the co-founders of the company, now 15 years ago. And I've had a lot of roles over those years.
Yep.
But in the last couple of years, I'm what we call our Chief Data Citizen, which is the equivalent of saying Chief Data Officer. So I'm responsible for Collibra's data strategy, our data products, and our data infrastructure.
Right, thank you. Very cool, data citizen, right? Data citizen officer.
The Chief Data Citizen. So
Chief data citizen.
yeah, I know it's a bit of a thing.
Yeah.
But essentially, we like to think that everyone who uses data to do their job,
Nice.
we call that a data citizen. And in companies and organizations today, that's nearly everyone.
Okay.
And I'm like their chief mascot data citizen.
Okay, very cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Thanks.
To start with, obviously, I know you both might have some founder story when you kind of started years back. Dave, you started almost 10 years back in somewhere close to that time for you as well. Stijn, would you like to share something with our audience today? Maybe Stijn, you can go first, yeah.
So you're asking about an origin story or
Yes.
something? Whew. Well, we gotta go all the way back to 2008. That's when we started. So funny thing is that we actually got started in the financial crisis. It was a very different time from today. Data only got more important. And what's an interesting origin story? So we started the company with about 4-ish founders, a little bit more, 5. And we are actually a spin-off from a university in Brussels. And to come to the topic of this podcast, right, the Semantic Layer, we're actually a spin-off from a semantics technology lab back in that day. So happy to talk about it.
Pretty interesting coming from the university altogether in the enterprise space. Obviously, is a huge thing.
Yep.
So, thanks for that. Dave, what about you?
Yeah, so similar to Stan, 5 total founders, started in 2013. So it hasn't been around for about 10 years now, so not as long as Collibra. So the origin story really for AtScale came out of Yahoo.
Okay.
So at Yahoo, we had big data before big data was a thing. We had a mess of all these different tools and different consumers who wanted to consume the data, and nobody could agree on what an impression was or what a click was.
Right.
And so I needed a semantic layer, and it didn't exist. So I had to go start a company to develop it.
That's pretty cool. But wait a moment, are you saying that you're responsible for this Hadoop mess in the first place?
So we were incubating Hadoop, but I was a customer of Hadoop. I wasn't in charge of it, but that was our first port, was a semantic layer on Hadoop.
Right.
And then we quickly saw that people were struggling with Hadoop, and these new cloud data platforms like BigQuery and Redshift and Snowflake and Databricks were becoming more popular. So we
Fortunately.
Yes, and so that's most of our business now is in the cloud and on those data platforms.
These are pretty interesting insights. Definitely that also brings me to another important question around the focus that's, obviously we've been hearing a lot around AI in 2023, and that started obviously back in November 2022. But what's the focus for Collibra and AtScale in 2023 going forward, and how do you look the space moving?
You want to go first, or should I?
You take it first.
That's all right. 2023. Here's one. Obviously, you mentioned AI. So November of 2022. So about 6-7 months ago. That's when, if you look at Google Trends, AI was flat for a long time, and then it boom skyrocketed up, just
That's
like
right.
Bitcoin, right? So it really, what happened is it democratized access to AI. Now everybody can do it, right? So obviously that's a topic on our minds.
Yep.
It's also a topic on our customers' minds. And it's going to give a lot of new things happening, like, hey, you have a Vertex database now, how do you catalog that? Or, when you put an AI system in production, how do you make sure that you have controls around it, like AI governance? And this is all very recent. I think Google only released all of their services 2 weeks ago. The European regulation was being discussed just last week, so all very recent. AI, top of mind. Second, I would say always is adoption. Because in the data intelligence journey, adoption is always key. So we keep working on that with our practices, how we implement with the customers, how we help them, but also with our features, like the data marketplace, for example. And then the one that is a personal top of mind for me is data monetization. I see too many data strategies which don't have a data monetization component. And I see too many data people who are like, hey, business, come speak the language of data. And I'm like, no. You're a data person, you go speak the language of the business, money. So those are my 3 things.
Good point.
Yeah, Dave, what do you think?
So I sat in on the session on Gartner Predicts. So they came out with their predictions in October of 2022. So what's that, like 6 months ago or something? And one of their predictions was 5% of employees will be using generative AI by 2026.
5%.
5%. Oops. And then, of course, ChatGPT came out a month later, and it's like completely blew that out of the water, right? So you're absolutely right that there's an inflection point where, traditionally ML and AI were very manual, very use case specific, and I think generative AI has really opened up the doors to applications that affect more people than just the data scientists sitting in their cube.
Definitely. So not just a new Clippy.
That's exactly right.
Oh, it is the new Clippy.
Well, some of that will end up as a Clippy. I saw also another session. It was the BI tool Bake Off, and all the BI tools. It was Click, it was Tableau, and it was Power BI. They're all showing ChatGPT integration. So making it so they can create those visualizations through text.
That's quite impressive, right?
Yeah, and it's there. So it's a little bit better than Clippy, but we'll see.
Awesome, amazing insights there. Quick question for you, Stijn, specifically around Semantic Layer. We've been obviously talking a lot around it. So how do you see the relationship with Collibra and Semantic Layer? What's like the overlap there, and how do you see customers benefiting out of the Semantic Layer?
Well, I always get a little bit of somebody's pushing my button when the word semantics is used. So I want to preface my answer with that. And that's just because where we come from originally, right? That semantics lab. Back then, the semantic web was going to be the next big worldwide web kind of thing, right? So it was a lot of noise around it. But if you look at the semantic layer in an enterprise, I think that's a very powerful construct. And I see it as 2 pieces. So you have one piece is more in between people, let's say. For example, let's say the 3 of us are each representing a silo in the business.
Right.
Sales, marketing, engineering, let's say, right? And now we're reporting on customer.
Right.
How do we know that we're all meaning the same thing with customer?
Exactly.
And how do we know that we're counting them the same way, right?
Very true.
That's an example of the business layer, the glossary, ontology, taxonomy, call it whatever you want.
Yeah.
And then there's like a second part, which is more maybe the data dictionary. I'm just using simple words, right?
Yeah.
And that's more about, okay, how does this connect to like a customer, but okay, how does it get in the tables and the columns? How is it structured? How is it formatted? How can I access it?
Yeah.
And I think that's where, if you look at a Collibra, we're really good at that people aspect. And then if you look at an AtScale, that's where it goes down to, okay, now you query this via the semantic layer.
Yeah, very good example there. What do you think about it?
Yeah, it's like that's a great. It's actually, you did it better than I could, Stan. So I'm kind of mad at you.
I'll send you a check.
But yeah, we we see a lot of customers we're in the same accounts where Collibra is really being used as that front door for users to get access to data, to find data and understand what's available. And it's really important for the semantic layer to be surfaced through Collibra so that we can connect those users to and allow them to find the data that they're looking for. And so it's a really complementary fit because we'll do that last mile of running the query, but you can't do that if users don't know, what that semantic layer is or how to find it.
Absolutely. So if I use that metaphor of shopping for data, you come to our store, the data marketplace, you find your data asset. Now you need it delivered at your doorstep. That's the semantic layer in AtScale doing that.
I love it.
And I heard a rumor that maybe you built this integration yourself.
Oh yeah, well yes. Now you outed me. Yeah.
I'm just messing with you.
But I learned a lot about Collibra because me and my other co-founder, Diane Wood, we built the Collibra connector for AtScale. So
Thank you.
I have a great appreciation for your platform and how well it's designed.
Thank you very much.
For those amazing insights there, that kind of also brings me to another interesting question that we've been hearing a lot around at Gartner, and just shifting gears a bit here in terms of bringing in the data franchise, the data mesh, the data fabric. Kind of interested to learn more about what do you think around that, hub and spoke. So Dave, do you want to give it a shot?
Yeah, so I see our most successful customers are using a hub and spoke style of analytics and creating data products. And so you can't really, the pendulum has swung both ways. Before we started with central IT owned everything. That didn't work because the business was always upset and they weren't able to get what they needed. And then we swung the pendulum over to the business and they created crazy stuff that created chaos and destroyed trust in the data. I think that the hub and spoke is a little bit of the best of both worlds. Governance and some control over the tooling and the standards, so if people are playing by the same rules, but still let the business who understands the business do the work. But do the work within the confines of some structure that is going to make it easier to govern and share across these different domains.
What do you think, Stijn, about that?
Well, I have to agree with Dave.
Yeah.
You have to empower the business with the tools and the instruments they need to make their business.
Yep.
What I like about the data mesh concept is, there's a lot of data architectures, right? Snowflake schemas and data lakes and whatnots. But the new thing that I find with the data mesh is that it brings a social component to it. It's not just the data architecture.
Right.
There's also a social component to it. So when I was reading this, I'm like, yes, right? Because that's governance. You have a domain of data, you have ownership around that domain. Who is responsible for that?
Yeah.
And how can they operate independently to make their business? So we're big fans of it.
Yeah.
And honestly, for the first time, I think very technical audiences, engineers are literally on the barricade saying we've been doing data mesh for years.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that's great. Finally, you're recognizing the value of governance. Thank you very much. We're fans of it, so I apply it internally as well. We have data coming into our data lake. That's a raw data set, gets registered in the catalog. Then people can shop for it, so that's a self-service function to the business stakeholders.
Yeah.
Big fans.
Yeah, those are great use cases and amazing examples shared. Thank you very much. One last question for both of you in terms of the things that we've been talking around, and I've been listening a lot about a term which is FinOps. And a lot of enterprise organizations have already been, kind of looking into it and see how they can, reduce the cloud spend and what could be done. And FinOps is kind of the thing that they're looking at. So, what are your thoughts around it?
Well, it's an interesting thing because what the cloud does, let's simplify it to storage and compute, right? What the cloud does is it says, okay, here, Mr. Business User, Mrs. Business User, you can now do this yourself. Right? You don't need this IT, you don't need this whatever. You don't need a data center, just use it. And the funny thing is that this is now bringing a direct connection between that business stakeholder and the costs. Because if they write a query that is very costly to run, they're ending up with the bill, right? So they're much closer to the cost itself, which is important, I think. And then you'll start to see, because pressures on costs are going to continue to mount. That will continue. So what this is going to do, actually, in my view, is it's going to make data management more important. Because if your data is well organized, there's less copies, there's a better structure, the queries are more efficient. So your costs for the cloud will go down by doing better data management. Finally.
Yeah, I love that. And we moved from CapEx, where you buy equipment and then you use it for as long as you can, and then when it starts to get too busy, you buy more, to OpEx, which is pay as you go. And that's changed the game, and I think some people are still operating on the old CapEx model. And like you said, if somebody runs a query, it can now be tracked back to that person, that business unit, in which case the business has to ask, what was the return on that investment, that cost? And so I think it's going to really drive a really good discipline of forcing companies and organizations to really provide a justification for why do I need that report once every 5 minutes?
Yeah, exactly, and that's why
can't I have it once an hour? Because the differences could be substantial.
Exactly. So that's why I'm a big fan of these data products, because it brings, we're a software company, so we're used to product management, but it brings that product management thinking to data. And product management thinking means, what's the need, what's the value, what's the cost? And if those are not balanced, then why are you doing this?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot more tools built around this space to help companies manage it. Because I think it's still, right now, it's a DIY kind of a process.
Wait a moment.
Yeah.
Are you DIYing a tool yourself again?
Yeah.
Just kidding.
I am right now for that too, for FinOps. We have our own FinOps challenges, right? We have our as a customer of the cloud. And as is Collibra, we use a lot of cloud resources to do our testing and platform certification.
Same.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I can only see the space evolving very quickly, and that's what I hear from obviously the founders of Collibra, AtScale. So looking forward to obviously seeing how the space kind of moves across. But I'm pretty sure the audience joining us would love to learn more about it. They might have some questions for you. So if they want to reach out, Stijn, where can they reach out to you?
Stijn at Collibra.com or Stijn Ries, that's maybe a bit hard to say, on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'll try to answer any question that comes in, and I'm always trying to be helpful when it comes to data.
Oh yes, I can validate that. I just reached out to Stijn and he's out there for the community. Dave, where can people reach out to you?
Okay, so it was Stijn at Collibra.com.
Stijn at Collibra.com.
I'm Dave at AtScale.com. That's
benefit of being a founder.
Being a founder. And yeah, LinkedIn, D Mariani on Twitter, all the different handles. But would love to chat with you.
Awesome. Thank you very much for doing this, and I'm looking forward to definitely doing more of these with Collibra, AtScale on the Ravit show. Thank you once again.